I'm following your lead. This is your episode, man.
Yeah, thank you. You know what I love about podcasting?
What?
People can't see our faces right now, and I can wear whatever I want.
Yeah.
And, like, people won't know. Like, right now, I mean, people will know now because I'm going to say it, but, like, right now, I'm just wearing sweatpants and a baggy t-shirt.
This is true. You don't have to, like, dress up for anyone.
Right.
Except for me, but
Yeah, but you don't care.
that's besides the point. Hey, so guess what?
What?
We officially have 50 listeners.
Woo! Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Honestly, I know that doesn't sound like a huge number, but the fact that we only have 3 published episodes right now and we have 50 listeners, I'm really excited about it.
Well, this will make 4.
Well, yeah, but like by the time that we're recording this, we only have 3 published.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone, for your continued support.
yeah, thank you. We
We
really
appreciate
appreciate it. And like this is just, I don't know, obviously we're putting ourselves out there, so it's a little nerve-wracking, but we both have been really excited about this for a while, and so it's just fun to see it come to fruition and see everybody just being so kind about it.
Yeah, that's great. Anyway, are you ready for a real long story that I worked 3 days on
Yeah.
for you and for everyone listening?
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, though. Do you want to tell everyone how big your family is?
How big my family is?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I have 9 siblings. So my parents have 10 kids, but 5 are biological and 5 are adopted.
Cool.
Was that what you needed?
Yep, that's
Okay.
perfect. Now, with such a big family, did you guys have any, like, I don't know, sibling rivalries
Oh, yeah.
and such?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Cool.
Those are the best. Did you guys, like, pull, like, fun little pranks on each other every now and then?
Yeah.
Are there any that you did that
No.
you're really proud of?
No, but I was usually the one at the receiving end.
Oh, who pranked you? And well, don't tell me who pranked you, but what were you pranked with?
Well, I can tell you it's my brothers. And one time my oldest brother put a Halloween mask on my pillow. So I was in bed, like sleeping, and I got up to go use the bathroom, and when I came back, there was a Scream mask on my pillow. It scared me so bad. And we used to tell each other like scary stories, and I had a ton of porcelain dolls in my room.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that.
Yes.
I don't know why.
My oldest brother would go and change their positions ever so slightly just to freak me out and get me all paranoid.
Yeah, because those things are creepy.
Yeah. And this is the same brother. One time I was trying to be a proper young lady, and so we were having dinner as a family, and I asked my mom for permission to excuse myself from the table, which we never did that. We weren't that kind of family. But this time I asked for permission to go use the bathroom. My mom was like, sure. Okay. So I get up and I go use the bathroom, and my brother had gotten up from the table before I had, and he went and hid in the shower.
Oh.
So I went into the bathroom, turned on the light, closed the door, and he jumped out and basically scared the pee out of me. So.
Oof. Well,
Yeah.
fun. Well, today I want to talk about a prank
Okay. This will be
between
fun.
brothers. But before we get there, this is the story of William the Conqueror
Okay.
and his family, his descendants. But first, so William the Conqueror, or William the First, he was the Duke of Normandy. He was born in the year 1028.
Holy cow.
So almost 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, put that into
The
perspective a
fact that
little
you were
bit.
able to find a story from that long ago
I know
is
there's
impressive.
a lot on this guy.
Really?
There's a
Okay.
lot on this guy. He's pretty famous.
Oh.
So he's a descendant of Rollo, who was he was a Viking and he was the first ruler of Normandy.
Okay.
And that happened back, over 100 years before William was born. So 911 was when the year 911 is when it happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. His most famous accomplishment was Battle of Hastings. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But to begin, William had kind of a rough beginning. He was the illegitimate son of the Duke Robert I of Normandy and his mistress Herleva. He was their only son.
Herleva?
Mm-hmm. His only son. But the illegitimacy of his birth proved troublesome for his, upbringing and the, succeeding of his father, because his father died when he was like 7 or 8, which would then lead him to be the Duke of Normandy at like such a young age.
Well, and they, back then, not that I would know, but they they didn't treat the illegitimate children very well. It's like they got punished for their parents' mistakes, which is really just not cool.
Yeah, I know. It kind of sucks. But yeah, anyway, so there were a lot of aristocrats that kind of fought for control over him because he was young, he was naive, very impressionable, because he was 7 or 8. How much do you remember?
7 or 8. Oh, I
7
didn't
or 8
realize
when this happened.
That young. Okay.
Yeah, like when you were 7 or 8, how manipulatable were you?
Very.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Very. So he goes on. Oh, real quick, he had some support, like from the Archbishop at the time, and then Henry I, who was the King of France at the time. And in 1046, there was a rebellion led by a guy named Guy of Burgundy. Guy of Burgundy. So William fled Normandy to King Henry, the King of France, who was his supporter, and then he returned back in 1047. So 1047, this was 12 years after he began his rule as the Duke. He was able to get rid of the rebellion against him, so he would have been 19 to 20. At that age, he was able to get rid of the rebellion against him, and he was able to gain authority over his duchy. So like his, the Duchy of Normandy. But he didn't really have complete control because he was still young. He didn't really have complete control until about 1060, so another 13 years after he returned from King Henry. So the rebellions, they included the Battle of Val-Edun in 1047. It says that it was claimed primarily through William's efforts. So he was still young, but he knew what he was doing. He had some support, but it was primarily through his efforts that they won.
Sure.
And then after this, William tried to invoke the Truce of God to kind of, it's intended to reduce the amount of violence and everything, like, certain days for abstaining from violence is kind of weird.
Kind of like, we're going to war except for Sundays.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny.
But there was still continuous warfare until about the year 1050. Around that time, it was in the 1050s, not exactly sure what day, but he married a woman named Matilda of Flanders. Huh. And
Matilda has been around for a very long time.
It has been around for a very long time.
Specifically. This is going to sound really dumb, but I have such a hard time picturing people being alive during this time. Like,
really?
Life doesn't exist before the 1800s.
Sure.
Well, and like, most of the things that you hear from this era is war. And part of me is like, well, what else did they have to do? They didn't have TikTok. They didn't have podcasts. But then again, if you're going to record things for history, you may as well record the really important things like war.
Like war.
So,
and what happened.
I'm sure they had a blast back then. It's just so weird for me to even consider what civilization was like. But
it's whack to think about.
They had Matildas. We have a Matilda. She's pretty famous. I know it's not the same one, but
big whack if it was. Cool. So yeah, he married Matilda of Flanders. Reason being, back then a lot of their marriages and betrothals, all that kind of stuff, was primarily for alliances. Not really much for love. That kind of came
more
later.
Like a contract.
Kind of like a contract, yeah. So after his marriage to Matilda, he gained a powerful ally with, the county of Flanders. And together, Matilda and William had 9 kids. So another big family. They had 4 sons and 6 daughters. Well, it says, the article I was reading says at least. It's potentially they had more, and there are a couple that are like maybe not. They were their child, but...
Well, 4 plus 6 equals 10.
You're right. Hold on. 4 plus 6 equals 10. So I guess I had 10 kids. Anyway,
Sorry,
I'll list them off here real quick.
I thought that's what you were insinuating, was that some articles say that they might have 10.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. So the oldest of these, his name was Robert. That was the name of William's father, so they did a lot of naming after each other back then as well. And he was born between the years 1051 and 1054. And then they had another son. Their second son was Richard. He was born, doesn't say exactly when. The dates on all their children are kind of iffy.
That's fine.
It just says before 1056. Not much is said about Richard because he died when he was 19 in a hunting accident in the New Forest.
Okay.
And that was around 1075 when he died. But yeah, like I said, not much is said about him in the midst of these stories besides that.
Okay.
Then there was William II. He was born between the years 1056 and 1060. Adeliza, her birth was definitely unsure. It was listed first in the records of the list of their daughters, and usually they did it chronologically, like who was born first. So she was the first, but unsure when she was born. Okay. Or likely the first, I should say. Had a daughter, Cecilia, who was born before 1066. Matilda, born in 1061. There's a lot of Matildas in this story. You had a lot of Johns your last story. This one had a lot of Matildas and Roberts and just a lot of names. They repeated them. But yeah, she was born around 1061-ish. Had a daughter, Constance, who was born from between 1057 and 1061. And not much is said about the daughters. It's just a couple of the sons that the story is mostly about.
Sure.
But Constance, they described her as kind of undesirable as a
mistress, maiden,
maiden,
whatever.
yeah, kind of like a wife, basically.
So you're saying she was ugly?
No. What it says, from what I got from it, she sounded like she was kind of a feminist.
Oh, okay.
Which back then was very much kind of no.
Oh.
But they said that she had a severe...
She had an opinion?
She had an opinion. It says, severe and conservative manner.
Oh, so, man.
Yeah. And that was
a wild one.
Yeah, but according to most of the subjects that were kind of around, she was kind to them. So she was kind to everyone, but also, I guess, opinionated.
I like her.
They had a daughter, Adela, in 1067. And then, next page. Their final child that was listed is named Henry. And he was born about 1068. And it says, this is kind of speculation, but they say that Henry and Adela were the 2 youngest, so they were like pretty close with each other, as most young children are, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, can you list them off by name, just by name? I want to hear them all.
Okay, so starting from the top, Robert, Richard, the one who died, William II, Adeliza, Cecilia, Matilda, Constance, Adela, and Henry.
That's 9.
That's 9. Maybe there's 5 daughters. Whatever. Cool.
Those are cool names, though.
They are cool names. Getting ideas?
Yep. This is not an announcement. My parents listen to this podcast.
Mine, I think, at least my mom does. I don't know my dad.
We're not announcing anything. Continue.
All right. Yeah, so the first act of politics, I guess, that William gave to his first son, Robert, kind of preparing him for, to be his heir. It was in 1062. Robert was about age 9 or 12.
9 or 12.
9 to 12, I should say, because, the dates of his birth were uncertain.
Yeah, that was just funny.
Yeah, I know. So the Count of Maine, a place called Maine, which was a French territory, Count of Maine died, and Robert was betrothed to that count's sister, but she died before the marriage.
Oh.
Yeah. But before that whole ordeal with the deaths and everything, Robert was sent to Maine to claim the county. So, when the count died, he was sent to claim the county, but the locals resisted.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you know what the life expectancy was back then?
Not really. Some of these sons lived up until like 80s,
Oh, okay.
until they're in the 80s.
So if they died young, that was unusual.
Kind of.
Okay.
They had a lot of like hunting accidents. For example, Richard
Mm-hmm.
in the New Forest.
Okay.
So a lot of them had that, and there were a lot of also deaths. Infancy births. What other kind are there? But
Yeah, so like I'm sure like women died in childbirth as well as
sometimes, yeah, some of the people in the story died shortly after giving birth.
uh-huh.
We don't go into those, but it was just what I was
Just
reading.
part of gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Just part of the history.
Yep. So yeah, the locals resisted in Maine. They resisted Robert, and then William invaded in 1064 to kind of secure his area. And then 1065, William allowed Robert to pay homage to the new Count of Anjou, which was another county that William had been conflicting with. But it was kind of like a peace treaty almost, but not really. It was more like pay respects to.
So wait, did he like get married to someone from that county?
No.
Is that what you're saying? Oh.
Mm. No, we'll get to his wife and everything.
Oh, okay.
But the Count of Anjou, this isn't really important. I just thought it was interesting. The Count of Anjou, how you pronounce it? Anjou. His name was Geoffrey the Bearded. So,
Cool.
yeah, again, not pertinent to the story. I just thought it was
Funny.
notable.
I wish we like said things like that today.
Like named each other stuff like Kourtney the Desirable.
That was cute. I was like, you can't say bearded because I shaved last night. Just kidding.
Myles the Redheaded.
The redheaded. I mean, you could go with bearded.
I could, but there are other people with much more prominent beards than mine.
I guess you could say like the ginger. I mean, people do say that. They don't call you Myles the ginger, but they like refer to you as a ginger.
Yeah, no, the ginger.
The ginger.
I am the ginger. All right, so with this homage paid to this count, Geoffrey the Bearded, William was able to secure the western border of his rule, his little, what do you call it? Fief. His little, not really kingdom, because he wasn't a king, but you know what I mean.
Wait, what? Called him a
His
thief?
Fief. F-I-E-F. Like his area of ruling.
I've never even heard that word before. Or if I did, it did not sink in anywhere.
Yeah.
Fief. I thought you said thief. I was like, that makes no sense.
Fief. I don't know how to pronounce actually, now that I think about it. Anyway.
Moving on.
So he was able to secure that area, and then he wanted to focus more so on another border with another area called Brittany, which I think is where Great Britain comes from, but I'm not exactly sure on that, because that wasn't so secure. So he went to that border to secure it. He invaded, and it doesn't really give us defined goal for his invasion, just that he kind of wanted to secure it. But he was able to destabilize Brittany and then force the Duke there to, focus most of his efforts on, repairing the county or his duchy rather than to expand. So that kind of gave William, a little bit more security, at least for a while. And then during his campaign in Brittany, he was able to recruit some of their nobles, and then those nobles would go on to support him in the invasion of England in 1066, which leads us to the Battle of Hastings. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
Cool.
I was like, that sounds familiar. I couldn't tell you anything about it, but I've heard of it.
So that is the one that I was saying is his William's most notable accomplishment.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the king at the time was a guy named Edward the Confessor, who was...
Again with those names.
You're right. He was the first cousin once removed of William. So William's first cousin once removed.
Gotcha.
I don't know how related exactly, but that's what it was.
You do know how related exactly.
But like first cousin, I don't know from which side of the family.
Oh, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Then there were many contenders for the throne. The most notable of them were William and a guy named Harold Godwinson. So Harold was the son of the Earl Godwin. so hence Godwinson. Right?
Yeah, like Thor, Odinson.
Yeah, exactly. So the Earl died in 1053, and Harold, being the successor. Oh, there's a side note here. Some reports say that Harold was one of the Bretons from William's campaign from his invasion in Brittany, and that he swore to uphold William's claim to the throne. There's not really much evidence supporting that, but throughout the whole article, it was talking about how William was accusing Harold of like betraying him. We'll get to it, but that's just
Okay.
a little side note. So it's not.
Okay, wait. So let me just make sure I'm understanding this.
'Kay.
So Harold and William are both trying to get the throne?
Yes, they're both contenders for the throne. So like
Okay.
basically, the king is like, okay, I have all these people. I guess he didn't have an heir or anything like that. So I have all these people that I could name king, and we'll see who it is when I die, basically.
Okay.
All right. So Harold had brothers. One of his brothers, his name was Tostig.
Tostig.
He became, so after the Earl died, he became, so their father, Godwin. After he died, Tostig became the Earl of a place called Northumbria. So 1065, Northumbria revolted. And then Harold, to kind of help with his claim to the throne, he persuaded King Edward to replace Tostig with another guy because of this revolt, because Tostig was revolting. Then forcing Tostig to exile in Flanders. In early 1066, Edward died. So the King Edward died. On his deathbed, he named Harold as king. And during this time, like on his deathbed, it's not exactly clear what happened. That's just the outcome of what happened. So Harold's now king. William was mad. And then Harold, he was like, oh man, William's going to be mad at this. So he started preparing for war, basically. Gotcha. For an invasion. So during the preparations that Harold was making, Tostig came back. He was with a fleet that was given to him by some guy in Flanders, Baldwin. I guess he was a guy of high standing. Not exactly sure what his title or ranking was, but his name was Baldwin. And he gave Tostig a fleet, but Tostig was unsuccessful. And then he retreated to Scotland, where he remained for a time, during which William and some nobles, they all sat down to kind of talk about risks for invading England. Pros and cons list, basically. Mm-hmm. The nobles were like, well, we could gain a lot from controlling England, so they made a decision to invade England. And then summertime came around, and William was starting to assemble his army and a fleet for his invasion. Somewhere it said that, it was noted that it was an exaggeration, but it said there was like 3,000 ships, which is a lot. But taking into account this as well, like, despite the exaggeration, it was still a lot. And it says that they were most likely built from scratch.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty impressive.
So that's what they were doing without cell phones.
Building ships.
Yes.
So way to go, William. And so William, he started to recruit from all over. And then for some undisclosed reason, William waited until after the summertime before he actually started to invade. In September, so after summertime as well, Tostig returns with a guy named Handrada, and he defeats the local forces in Northumbria.
Okay.
And then Harold gets word of that, and he meets them at a place called Stamford Bridge, and he kills both Tostig and Hardrada. So Tostig was pretty unlucky with his stuff. So
poor guy.
Sad day for him.
His name didn't even carry on.
All right. After that battle, Harold kept some of his troops in that area. So the ones that he took up with him for that battle, he left up there, which was up north. Then he headed back down south. Then on his journey back, he received word that William was going to start invading. So Harold thought he was so clever. On his way back, he decided to stop in London. It says that he was there for about 7 days, and then he made his way back. But William's scouts were smarter than him, and they waited around for him. When they headed back, they're like, "Hey, William, he's on his way." So William's like, "All right, let's get to battle." So William had the advantage because he kind of had the element of surprise Harold was expecting him not to know about. him delaying his trip.
Mm-hmm.
William having the advantage, he eventually won, but the English clergy did not like that William won. So they appointed another guy as king before William was able to assume it.
So all of this battle was completely pointless.
Kind of. So William went on to capture other cities, so he kind of took a detour, and he captured cities here and there. So he kind of did a little, I don't know, I guess like a U shape, because it said he headed south, and then he crossed the river and then headed back up.
Okay.
And he claimed many cities on his way. Before Harold was able to get to London, William was able to stop him and get him to submit. And then after William claimed England, there were many rivalries up until about 1076 to 1077. So between those years, there were like people trying to, I guess, get the better of William, but to no avail, because he killed all who opposed him. I don't know if killed is the right word, but he fought them off. By 1077, William was actually doing pretty well for himself. He was able to kind of calm down these rivalries and these revolts. So this was 11 years after the Battle of Hastings. So he had the Kingdom of England under his rule, and then this kingdom was, or this, I guess, his rule was referred to as the Anglo-Norman Empire.
Okay.
So Norman coming from Normandy, Anglo coming from England for some reason.
Sure.
So going back to William's children, his three most notable sons were Robert, William Rufus is how he's referred, and Henry. So Robert being the oldest, William then younger than him, and Henry being the youngest. He was 9 years old during the year 1077, or about, because birth dates were kind of iffy. So some power over Normandy was given to Robert. He would have been named the Duke of Normandy, but he and his father had kind of like a little rivalry going between them.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So William said, no, you can't be a duke. And then there's a guy, his name is Orderic Vitalis. He was a chronicler, a historian monk. So he kept most of the records that we have about William were from him. Anyway, this guy Orderic, he wasn't really a fan of Robert, William's son, William's older son.
Robert, nobody likes him.
He claims Robert was power hungry and, quote, urged on by youthful ambition and the imprudent suggestions of those about him, unquote.
Okay.
Now, Orderic says that the two older brothers, so William and the two other brothers, sorry,
Henry.
not older, yeah, William and Henry, they usually took their father's side. They took William's side, just I guess because they didn't like Robert. Because from the sounds of it, and you'll kind of get this as well, Robert kind of seemed like a spoiled brat.
Sounds like it.
Very entitled, saying like, I want this, I want that, like, give me more power, give me more responsibility. And I don't know if he actually was kind of like a punk. That's just how it comes off. He could have just been like, this is my right. I feel like I'd be a good leader of this. But I don't know exactly because, I wasn't there. So Henry and William II, not really liking Robert, decided to pull a prank on Robert. While Robert was playing some dice, apparently they played dice back then, while Robert was playing dice with some of his, I guess, military friends. So what William and Henry did, they come along with a chamber pot. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I'm guessing it's really big. Because what they did is they filled it with a bunch of water, and from the floor above them on the second floor, they poured it all down on top of them, getting them all wet. Prank.
So was it like a balcony or something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing so. It just says the floor above them, so I'm guessing a balcony.
Cool.
It was in a castle, so you know how floors work in castles. More or less, I guess. So anyway, after this happened, Robert's friends were like, hey, why do you put up with this? Your brothers think that they're better than you. Go do something about it. So Robert runs to confront them, but all the noise that they were causing attracted the attention of William the First,
Okay.
William the Conqueror, of their father. So he arrived on the scene before Robert could really do anything. Some say that there were like a brawl actually started between them.
They're brothers. That makes sense.
And it's kind of funny. This isn't related to the story, but like while I was reading this, I'm like, I was trying to like picture myself actually seeing that happen. I'm like, because like you said before, did time really exist back then? Did things actually happen? But like hearing these stories and everything, and how I guess brothers play pranks on each other, kind of, I don't know, puts it a little bit more into perspective. Like these were actual people too. Like they were living lives more or less like ours.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was
Well,
kind
and
of
that's what
interesting.
it's funny because like reading back, it sounds like there was this proper meeting. Like, you're gonna let your brothers treat you like that? You better do something. And I'm sure it was like, oh my gosh, that was annoying. Like, go get him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably way more laid back than what it sounds
Probably,
like.
probably. So yeah, William, the father, William the First, used his royal authority to end the son's dispute. But you know, kids will be kids. Robert was still mad,
Man.
mad. And the following night, he and his friends planned to seize the castle. It was called the Castle of Ruin. Rouen, not Ruin.
Okay.
Rowan, Ruin. You know how it goes. So yeah, their plan was to seize the castle, but their plans were thwarted by the king's butler. He got wind of it and then told William about it. And then William reacted by stopping them and then basically exiling Robert. So things didn't calm down for about a whole year.
Okay, so maybe it was a little bit more serious.
Yeah, it was a little serious. It was a little serious.
Like he was a little bit angry.
Well, if you think about it, Robert was, you know, the oldest of them. And, you know, Henry was he was like, what, 15 years younger than... I have it written down here somewhere. Let me look. Yeah, so Robert at the time was mid-20s. William was about 5 years younger, and Henry was 9.
Okay.
So, like, you know, 15 or so years younger than Robert. So it's like, you know, kind of a slap in the face, a little bit of humiliation from younger brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And back then, you know, reputation was a huge thing. I guess it still is now, but...
Yeah, but it was like bigger than family in some places.
Exactly. All right, so yeah, after Robert was exiled, things didn't really calm down for about another year, potentially more. And there was still discontentment between William and Robert, you know, rightfully so.
Uh-huh.
But that also led to more rebellions. So there was one point where Robert attempted to raid Normandy, but William chased them back to, like, Robert and company, because Robert was exiled with, you know, the guys that were with him that were supporting him and everything.
Sure.
And then people that he picked up along the way. So all of them attempted to raid Normandy, but William chased them back to another area, in which Robert and company, they gained more followers in that area they were chased to.
Okay.
William went to go to them, just to kind of stop further attacks from Robert.
Mm-hmm.
But William's forces were overcome. I know, right? Yep. So even William himself was knocked off of his horse, and he was almost killed by Robert. But there were two different ways that it says William was saved. One was that Robert recognized the sound of his voice, his father's voice, and was like, oh wait, this is my dad. I probably shouldn't kill him right now, at least. And then the other account says that there was a guy who saved him named Toki, was a son of Wigerd. That's the only thing that's said about him, besides the fact that he perished in that battle.
Aw.
Yeah. So either way, either Robert recognized his father's voice, or this guy Toki saved William.
Okay.
So then after that, it was about the year 1080. William had once again promised to Robert that Normandy would be his upon his death. So when William died, Robert would get Normandy.
Okay.
And they both came to kind of an agreement on that. But the word of William's defeat, like him being defeated, kind of started to spread amongst his little duchy. And I shouldn't say little, it's pretty big. His kingdom. He was a king at the time, so his kingdom. So because of this, more rebellions started to occur. Like, he's vulnerable, let's try to revolt. And a lot of leaders were being killed, so William sent his half-brother Odo to handle this rebellion. And we'll get to Odo a little bit as well in a minute.
Okay.
I don't know much about Odo's history. He's not too important that I wanted to research it. He's just the half-brother
Okay.
of William. But he does come up later.
Sure.
Robert later on was sent on a campaign against the Scots, and he was successful, and he forced their leader to kind of build a fortification after he returned to England. So like they had a little bit of Scotland there. Then leading up to William's death, so this was the year about 1082. For some reason, this is kind of where Odo comes up again. He comes up a couple more times, but he had his half brother Odo arrested.
Why?
I don't know. It doesn't really say exactly. So I had to kind of speculate a little bit after a little bit more reading, because somewhere I could say that Odo was kind of acting out of his scope. He was trying to recruit people from William's kingdom to invade places like Italy without William's permission.
Gotcha.
I think that is the reason that Odo was just kind of acting out of his scope.
Okay.
So anyway, he was imprisoned about the year 1082. There aren't really much other important things that happened leading up to William's death, I should say.
Okay.
There is a couple things I will mention. Robert comes back again in rebellion with the French king's support. Yeah, apparently William and the French had kind of a falling out, but again, that's not really too pertinent to the story, so I didn't research it that much. And that was around the same time that William's wife Matilda had died. Well, died. Not had died.
Wah, wah.
So on top of the death of William's wife, now his son's coming back with French king's support, trying to...
Kind of sounds like he's a little out of his mojo, too, because the beginning of your story, there was a lot of battles. Like,
Yes.
a lot. Like, he was just kind of on the top of his game.
Yes, William was very successful, hence
And
the
then-
name William the Conqueror.
Right. And then now it's, everything kind of seems like it's crashing down on him. Like, his half-brother, he gets arrested, his wife dies, his son is still being a punk.
Right.
Trying to get after him.
Exactly. But all this was kind of happening around the year 1093.
Okay.
So we're almost up to not 1093, 1083. I'm sorry.
1083.
1083.
Okay.
So then 1086, William left England for the continent. And at this point, from the sounds of it, William was kind of giving up on everything. So he left England, he went to the continent, and at that time, he married off his daughter Constance, the one with an opinion. He married her off to the Duke Alan of Brittany. And so that was kind of going along with what he had previously done, like trying to get strong alliances and everything.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. And of course, Robert is still causing trouble with his alliance with the French kings. So he, is still planning rebellions and everything. Then comes along 1087. Now, most of what was said about William's death is that he was injured from the pommel of his saddle. He was getting old.
Okay.
So I guess, I don't know, backbreaking. I don't know exactly. So that was the one that popped up most, but it also says it was possible that he fell ill. He started to fall ill.
I mean, he was getting old.
Yes, exactly. And he died soon after that.
Okay.
In the year 1087. Upon the death of William, Robert was left with Normandy because William held up his end of the bargain. And England was given to William the Second, so the second oldest son after
Gotcha.
Richard died.
Okay.
And Henry, the youngest one, was given money so he could buy his own land.
Oh.
So go Henry.
I want that deal.
Right. Now, I'll get to Henry in a little bit. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about the rivalry between William II and Robert. So...
The brothers.
The brothers. Yeah, the two older brothers.
Thor and Loki.
Thor and Loki, sure. So, it's noted that between Robert and William was the stronger one of the two. They said that Robert was kind of weaker. And
this is perfect because Loki was the bad guy and Thor was the strong one.
Yeah, but wasn't Thor older than Loki?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's the concept.
The good guy versus the bad guy.
So Robert was weaker, and the nobles liked that because he was more easy to manipulate. And so Robert and William, they both established an agreement that if had the other one died, the other one would get their kingdom or their rule. They would be each other's heirs. But Robert, he broke the agreement in the rebellion of 1088. I don't know if he planned this or not, but it was planned with some nobles, including Odo, the half-brother.
Okay.
And this rebellion was not a success because Robert didn't show up. They still attempted, but
That's actually hilarious.
yeah, I know. Then in 1091, William the Conqueror died. So now this is his son William.
For sure.
So 1091, William II invaded Normandy successfully, and he forced Robert to give up part of his land. But then William was a little bit nicer than Robert, and so he offered his help to gain control over the lost French lands, which include the county of Maine, which was what Robert was primarily after, because I guess that was powerful land.
Okay.
That never really happened, though, but William was pretty tenacious, and he had secured up his own French lands, and then that led to him having more control over his kingdom. So he was pretty secure in what he was doing. Now, this is a little side note as well. William never married, nor did he have any mistresses or anything like that. So a lot of historians speculate that he was homosexual.
Okay.
Because he didn't have any heirs, no children. He didn't mess around with anyone at all.
Well, and it sounds like during that time it was really important for them to, one, make alliances, which is half of what marriage was.
Right.
But then also to, have their name, their family, passed down.
Yes.
So that's kind of a big deal that he didn't, especially,
exactly.
In that time.
And being the heir of the kingdom as well was pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So it could have been just because he was busy, or maybe he didn't want companionship. But again, the speculation is that he was gay.
Well, I mean, going back to that too, if his primary goal was, to get the throne or whatever, you would think that along with that, it would be just as important for him to maintain it with his blood.
You would think so.
So,
yeah.
I can understand why they would think that he was homosexual.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to it though. So more to William's tenacity. They say that if William II fell short of his father's legacy, so meaning that meaning William I's ability to overcome obstacles through conquering and violence and such like that, William II had charisma and political skills to back him up. So if he fell short of any kind of violent matter, he would be able to talk to them and figure something out.
Gotcha.
So, for an example, in 1095, the Earl at the time of Northumbria, his name was also Robert, he refused to attend a tri-annual meeting in which the king would discuss his governmental decisions with the high-ranking nobles.
Uh-huh.
William responded to his absence with leading an army against him and defeating him and imprisoning him. So
I guess if you have duties, you gotta do it.
Yeah. And then Robert, going back to Robert, in 1096, he left the country for the Holy Land to lead the First Crusade. So there's the Crusades. But at the time, he was also dead broke. While he was away, he's like, hey, Brother William, would you be interested in mortgaging my country so I can have money? Or Normandy, not his country. Yeah. Anyway, so he mortgaged it to William, his duchy to William. And then Robert was still away at the time, but William died in the year 1100. And
it's kind of funny that they're, at war with each other, essentially. And then he's like, hey, wait, I need a loan.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, bro, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. So William died in 1100, like I said, in a hunting accident in the New Forest.
I'm starting to get a little suspicious of these hunting accidents.
Yeah, it was in the same place too, in the New Forest.
Yeah, definitely suspicious. It's a little sus.
Also, another notable fact about William is that during his rule, he was noted as smart but ruthless.
Okay.
So pretty witty, pretty cunning, but also headstrong.
Got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
But yeah, on Robert's way back, he was going to marry a girl from a wealthy family in hopes of getting money to buy back his duchy. And since Robert was away during the time that William died, the kingdom was then given to Henry, the younger brother.
Gotcha.
We'll talk a little bit about Henry's background before the kingdom, but before that, talk a little bit about Robert and how much he did not like that. So he tries to rally up some folks to take the crown from him. The people didn't respond to Robert.
They're probably just over him at this
probably.
point.
From the sounds of it, he was kind of unpopular, especially being away for so long. He was getting kind of unpopular, so people were like, nah. But Robert tried anyway, but due to his lack of preparation and resources, this allowed Henry to repel him, send him away. And then Robert had to renounce his claim to the throne. So no more throne for Robert. And then another side note, in the Crusades, people said that Robert, he was a great field commander, but a horrible strategist.
That checks out.
Yeah, that checks out. So hence the lack of preparations and resources.
And not showing up to himself.
So despite Robert's strategism and everything, he still continued to attempt to invade England. And that eventually his continual attempts started to make Henry mad.
Give up, man.
So then Henry retaliated. And then 1106, Henry was successful in his invasion and claimed Normandy under his English rule. Then Robert was then imprisoned for 20 years in Castle of Wiltshire. And then after the 20 years, he was moved to Cardiff, where he died in 1134. And being in his early 80s. That's where the early 80s comes in. But Robert, he had a son with his wife, William Clito. But he was also a troublemaker. His son was also a troublemaker. And
Also
he
checks out.
and he attempted to invade Normandy multiple times, but each time he did, he failed.
Is it because he lacked strategy?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
He kind of seemed like, this was my father's, I'm going to take it back, but he also was bad at planning.
His father.
But Robert also had 3 illegitimate children. Not much is said about them, but I'll talk about them just briefly. So there was Richard, who died in a hunting accident in the New Forest.
What is happening?
Yeah. And then there was William, who was the full brother of Richard. And these were both illegitimate sons. And then also a daughter who married some noble. That's the end of them. Now let's talk about Henry. So with the money left to him after his father died, Henry bought the country of Cotentin. And he was very successful in building it up, and quite quickly at that. In 1100, he assumed the throne, and he made a promise to correct any of his brother William's, to correct any of his unpopular policies. Robert, this is before Robert died. He invaded and kept. He invaded Cotentin while Henry was there, and he kept Henry there for a few years before releasing him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Trapped in your own land kind of thing. Kind of sad.
These stories, I forget that they span over decades.
Right.
Yeah.
So Henry was also a well-educated kid. He was well-educated in Latin, for example. I don't know how common that was back then, but they felt it necessary to record. And Henry married a lady named Matilda of Scotland. And then it said that he had 2 surviving children. I don't know maybe they had more that died in infancy. They were Empress Matilda and William Adelin. And I won't go too much into them just because that's
irrelevant.
Yeah. So
we've heard enough about Matildas and Williams. No
right.
more.
But Henry was a bit of a sleazebag. And he had many illegitimate children.
I was rooting for him.
With many mistresses.
Dang it.
So after Henry gained control, after he invaded Normandy and gained control of it, he was challenged by some of Robert's son's supporters. And they were also unsuccessful. And then they also said about Henry's rule that he was harsh but effective ruler. A harsh but effective ruler. And he was apparently very cunning, having manipulated many nobles in both England and Normandy.
Henry was?
Henry was.
Huh.
So Henry was pretty smart. And also during Henry's rule, he hired people that they called new men. Reason being is that, usually during those times they included a lot of, especially in political decisions, they included the nobles, high-ranking officials.
Mm-hmm.
But what Henry did with these new men, he hired people that they were from obscure backgrounds. So whether they be farmers, commoners, I don't know what they were.
Oh, that's
just
really
as obscure.
smart.
Yeah. So during Henry's reign, he had many successes, but also many struggles. Most of which we're running out of time, so I won't go into them. But a lot of one of the struggles was trying to figure out who his heir would be, especially with all these illegitimate children and everything. So after a lot of debate, the debate for the succession led way up until even after his death, and he was leaning towards his daughter Matilda to take over, but it was eventually decided that a guy named Stephen of Blois would take his place.
Oh my gosh, if I were Matilda, I'd be so mad.
Yeah. Right. I think that's why she's called, because it said Empress Matilda, but I'm not sure what she's the Empress of.
Oh.
So maybe that was trying to allude to that or not, but I don't know. But anyway, that's the story of William the Conqueror's troublesome sons. I mean, there was more that I was reading. I'm like, oh, that'd be so cool to share, but I'm already going to run out of time.
That's okay.
So, it's gone already, so it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a pretty cool story.
That is a really cool story.
That whole story, that whole sibling rivalry was fantastic.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the original story that I was going to tell you, because I told you the other day, I'm pretty sure I found a cool story. This wasn't it.
Oh. That's okay.
I don't know if I'll talk about this family, because it's not really a family.
That's okay.
It's I probably won't talk to you about it, so I'll give an honorable mention to them. It was about the Shimazu family or clan. It was a clan of samurai warriors. After reading about it, though, I'm like, this
isn't a story. Gotcha. Okay.
It's pretty small.
That's what she said.
It's cool though.
That is cool.
Like the reason it says family, because it's a Japanese story, hence samurai, but it's about like a clan who was a branch of the Minamoto clan. I can't speak. Minamoto clan.
Okay.
Who was basically this clan was those people that were of high standing but not royal family. So it was from the empire, it was given to them. This name was given to them, the
Gotcha.
Minamoto. And they have lots of branches off of this clan as well, and this was just one of them. But yeah, honorable mention to them.
That's cool. If you do end up finding more information about them, that would be a fun story.
It would be a fun story, but I don't know. I did a lot of digging about it.
And you couldn't find much?
And I couldn't find.
That's okay.
And when I say a lot, it wasn't really in-depth digging. It was more like skimming through what the articles were saying, and it's like it's really only talking about one guy. And what they did, the reason why they popped up on one of my suggestions was because this family they went for centuries. It went on centuries, but a lot of the time in between is just lost and gone.
Gotcha.
But they are the main reason behind the current Japanese governmental system right now.
Wow.
So they're pretty cool. So if anyone's interested in them, they should look them up and read more about them. They're pretty cool.
No, I think the story you did today was really cool.
I agree. I went through a few different families. I'm going to talk about those, so I'm not going to mention those because those are also really good.
Yeah.
This one was just the one that appealed to me the most.
It's funny to think that the prank of them pouring the water over is really what tipped what's his face, Robert. Tipped him over the edge and started this whole war. Mm-hmm. And I'm over here thinking oh, it's nothing, but really it turned into years of turmoil. And I'm sure there was some hard feelings that were built up
Oh, for
before
sure.
that. But,
For sure.
you know. Well, cool.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about William the Conqueror.
Yeah.
I
What a cool dude.
really enjoy those kind of medieval and ancient stories.
Yeah.
I've never really been a huge fan of, modern history, like basically from 18th century on.
Okay.
I don't know why, it's just never really appealed to me. But when it comes to like, ancient Egypt and ancient Greece and medieval times, I'm like, oh heck yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, it's cool.
But sadly, records get lost over time, and the more time that it's been since then, the more stuff that's lost.
Well, and it's hard to know too just how things were back then. 'Cause,
Exactly.
there were some there were some time periods where women, had absolutely no role in politics.
True.
Right? But then there's other times like this where, his daughter was almost given the throne. But
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't. But I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint exactly like what their roles were and what was socially acceptable and things like that.
Exactly. Because from the sounds of it, Henry was trying to start, a new reform, I guess, with all these, the new men,
Yeah.
and then making his daughter the ruler of the kingdom. So, like, he seemed kind of like a revolutionary a little bit, and I respect that about him.
Yeah, but here's the thing with him. I was totally rooting for him, and then you find out that he's actually a little bit of a sleazeball. And so my wonder is that, like, he had great intentions and then was bought off.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, because
Maybe.
there's a little bit of the shadiness, in politics, and I'm sure there were things happening behind the scenes that weren't recorded.
Right.
Like,
But from what I read, Henry actually seemed like he was very kind of self-spoken, hard-headed, I guess. But like I don't know. The reason I like him was because he was trying to change things up a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how I was comparing them to Thor and Loki?
Yeah.
Towards the end of Robert's life, I was starting to picture that guy from The Office.
Which guy?
I think his name is Robert. Is it? I don't know. The one that is bald and really obnoxious.
Huh?
That comes back. Hold on, where's my phone? The guy.
The bald guy?
Yeah, he's balding. He's like not a main character, but he's a character that like knows Michael from their past, and they were buddies together.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
What is happening?
I know who you're talking about. Oh shoot, what is his name? Packer.
Yes.
Todd Packer?
Yes, I think.
Please hold.
Todd Packer.
Todd Packer, okay.
Yeah. So I was picturing Todd Packer from The Office because he was just like so confident in himself and was like, I'm this hot crap. I don't know. I'm this hot person that can do no wrong and I'm so powerful. And then everybody else is like, dude, you peaked 14 years ago. Like, stop. Oh, man.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's kind of, that comparison makes sense. Yeah. Also, I wanted to say this, but I couldn't remember who it was. One of William's children was a redhead. Or likely a redhead. I want to say it was his son William.
Okay.
But I don't remember.
That is definitely an honorable mention. That had, yeah, that's important.
Yeah. And as far as
William the Ginger.
As far as William's daughters go, a lot of them were just married off to nobles, for
that was their purpose.
Political reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. To form alliances.
If that were the case here, there's an alliance between us and Australia now. Just kidding.
Oh. I think there already was.
That's what I'm saying. If that were the thing now, then we're golden.
Right. Yeah, and some probably a bunch of cool things happened with his daughters, but again, the main meat of the story, the good stuff was between these brothers, which is why I covered them instead of the whole family.
Yeah, and the dad.
And the dad, yeah. He was cool. I like him.
Yeah, he was cool. The Conqueror.
The Conqueror.
Cool,
Can you call me Myles the Conqueror? Myles the Ginger. That's fine too.
I'm going to hold my tongue.
Please do. All right. Well, that's the end of the episode.
Oh, fun.
Thanks for sticking around for so long.
Good job.
Thanks.
That was a lot of research
That
you did.
was like 10 pages.
You gave yourself
Almost 10
you
pages.
gave me a little history lesson and yourself.
It was good.
Of a time that really just doesn't exist. Come on.
I'm going to try to find more stories that are kind of during that time, but because I mean, royal families are a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening again.
Yeah, thanks guys. Episode 4. Wow.
On our way to the big leagues.
50 listeners.
Yeah. Tell your friends. Tell your friends to tell their friends.
What?
I said tell your friends, and then tell your friends to tell their friends.
Oh, I get you.
And so on and so forth. Pay it forward.
Yes. Do what Myles just said.